Welcome to the 24th episode of Tokenizing Everything, our weekly interview series with thought leaders in the blockchain industry. Today's guest is Dr. Michael Gibbert, serial entrepreneur whom I'll be speaking with about the European Blockchain Association, where he is the chairman and Amazing Blocks is a proud member. So before we begin, I have to mention that all opinions are solely personal and do not reflect the opinion of Amazing Blocks or any other involved parties. Welcome, Michael. How are you?
Welcome back. Thanks for having me. And I'm great. I'm actually quite excited, even in Corona times this year and also the year before. We're definitely in the purpose of giving more traction on everything blockchain. So I think we are at the right time with the right topic. And I'm quite excited to be with you on this Friday and to talk about the European Blockchain Association and, of course, tokenizing everything as the topic of the podcast.
Thank you for that shout out. So maybe would you briefly start by introducing yourself, who you are, and then maybe giving some background on how you joined the blockchain space?
Sure. Thanks for that. Basically, all about blockchain. My name, as you said, is Michael Gibbert. I just started with the internet stuff quite a while ago, right after working in the USA for a couple of years. So in 1995, I was one of the early members of a company called CompuServe. The other one might remember it. So I was employee number 7 here in Germany. And it all started with the internet, basically. And from there, I founded companies. I did one IPO with one company at what they call German Stock Exchange Neuer Markt in 2001. Learned that how to gain money and got more and more interested into, of course, stuff that is innovative and that has the potential of changing things and changing industry and disrupting industries. And one of those things is blockchain. I looked into several projects about 5-6 years ago in the early wave of blockchain, and I've seen there a huge adaptation, especially on the technology side, in an industry adaptation, but also driven more or less from very technical people. And that was the way as people in the management department and especially in the decision level kind of looked a little bit more skeptical on it. And what changed in the last 3-4 years was basically a huge rush into blockchain as a game changer for industries and also for the whole concept of societies and working together. And this brought me into the topic more on, of course, practical matter. And we looked into several engagements. Due to our engagements we already had with the European Commission, I was there on several work groups in the Commission, and there, of course, is also a declared demand on having an association, or let's say a bounding fit on how to work together, especially on the different occasions and actions within the European community. And there we came first on the idea of creating a thing like the European Blockchain Association. And so we started thinking about creating it around about 2.5 years ago and started creating it 2 years ago. And here we are, and we're quite excited having that fundamental basis on offering co-workmanship, but also having a structured approach going into specific topics and also having some valuable output already that we can then master and, of course, develop.
Very, very interesting. So thanks for this explanation of your path. So when people join the blockchain space, they often describe a wow moment, so to say, that really show them, okay, this is the future, right? So maybe could you briefly describe what was it to you that really excited you about blockchain and why you basically went all in on this space, so to say?
I think my wow moment is kind of in waves, I would describe it. And my first wow moment was in Miami, basically, really in Miami on a show called Crypto and Blockchain. And this was 2004. So basically 2004 it was part of a developer conference, and it was kind of off topic. It was hot, but was really technical, really nerdy. And And I remember that the people who were there were so excited about it and were so involved and engaged, which I've basically just seen at 15 years earlier at a W3 conference in Boston, where the internet basically was excited to having background images. And I had a wow moment there saying, you know, this is something where when people get so excited on a development level, then there is more into it. It's not just a new version. It's not just an alternative thing of existing things. It's something definitely new, change with the potential changing a lot of things. And that was kind of my first wow moment. The second one was when, you might remember that also 2-3 years ago, the ICO wave with the utility tokens and the ability to kind of restructure in a dramatical way on an alternative financing side on how to raise money. Of course, you know, if there is a way that is so innovative and so easy, there's also a dark side to it, but it showed a way on being independent on that stage of raising money from banks and traditional vehicles. And this was also a very big wow moment for me to really see impact on blockchain related developments.
Okay, yeah, I would probably describe it similar to that. It happens in waves, right? You have these different moments where you realize the true perspective, the true potential from different perspectives, right? So yeah, I fully agree with you on that. So maybe in terms of Europe, how would you describe the current status quo in regards to blockchain, adoption within the EU potentially, and also not so much from a governmental level, but also from a societal level?
Right now, if you structure it down to the European Union with 27 member states, you have a quite diverse setup on intellectual side, adoption side, and basically also, I would say, industry penetration. If you look into highly developed countries, especially from the industry sector like Germany, France, and several others, and then you see a huge kind of trial error movement on the industrial integration. Logistically, double integrations in blockchain for production, and also kind of cost reduction, integration necessities, and something like that. But if you look into educational side and societal impact, we are seeing a lot of traction when you go to the Nordic countries, especially Estonia, Sweden, Denmark, Finland are the ones who are kind of leading the transaction from theoretical implementation into practical matter, especially when it comes to societal impact, which is for us a very good playing field and testing ground to see how blockchain-related decentralized systems can really benefit people without them knowing about it. For them, it's just beneficial and a very big plus point when in the back office, basically, blockchain-related system work. And the third part is, I would describe as a financial revolution. So not only gaining money, but also, of course, blockchain as an implementation in financial existing systems. We have seen Libra, we have seen government coins, actually this week, the Economist has a headline, the government coin revolution. So we see there that basically every central bank in the European Commission, and of course the European Central Bank, is not only actively thinking about decentralized system, but also concepting it already. And I think we will see in just a short time frame, in a couple of years, there the first results. And that will, of course, dramatically shift the power between banks and users and companies. And the whole ecosystem will be kind of evolutionized in a very dramatical way, positively.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. And we'll dive into the European Blockchain Association in a second. Something that really interests me, since you mentioned it, the so-called government coins. What is your take on this? Do you think there will be a competition between privately issued stablecoins like USDT, USDC, and CBDCs, or what is your take on the future of this industry on that regard?
You know, and I really, this is my personal opinion. I think the government coins, of course, have the huge advantage on pushing it directly and kind of having a more forced version of in a directive of using it, and also giving the understanding on having a more stability, even if there is not really a stability, but giving the people who use it kind of in a traditional way a stability mindset. Therefore, I think government coins, in terms of issuing them and having kind of a pseudo decentralized version like Ripple or all the other related solutions out there, could give in a first stage of blockchainization of industries and government coin integration, a good example on how to use this. I think the people, especially the younger generation, sees the problematics that could arise there. You know, not only is, of course, a kind of a central/decentral version always problematic in terms of control, as the control is central, and the other one is kind of joint stability efforts. I think it's not only an issue from the people coming kind of from the Europeans as a whole, but also from the banks. I think the banks at the moment are forcing their way in on, you know, the level of importance they will still have in the future, because at the moment they see a lot of importance decreasing, especially when it comes to power play in the European Union, but also in all the financial activities. And therefore, to make it short, I think first there will be an integration, and there will be definitely kind of a competition, but not on the same level playing field. Compare it maybe to, compared to soccer, I would say there is a Champions League, which will be the government issued coins. There will be a Super League, now also proposed by Manchester United and a couple of others, which could still exist, however, but will be kind of hard to manage. But if the private sector is working together, there could be an additional Super League.
Okay, yeah, that's a good example. You know, I always like when people describe the blockchain space also with these kind of metaphors, right? That shows that you have really done your homework on that space and have an in-depth knowledge, right, in terms of understanding the industry. So let's dive into the European Blockchain Association. You've already mentioned a bit, you know, how you guys were founded and everything, but can you maybe share some more insight on what exactly does the European Blockchain Association do, and what are kind of like the most crucial goals that you want to achieve?
Sure. Maybe I first start with the structure, because I think that is quite unique. You know, the association, normally association, as you know, there is a board and there are committees and everything is very formal and everything is kind of a little bit lame, I would say, or a little bit slow sometimes. And when we really thought deeply and invested a lot of time, effort, and brain into the structure itself. So we started from the decentralized autonomous organization as kind of a good playing ground, a good starting point. And the derivative of that is basically the DSAO. So it kind of describes the type of network connecting individual nodes that act autonomously on a basis of a self-created rule set. And the DAO financial transaction record and programs rule then are maintained on the blockchain, and member activities are not influenced by this central government or by a central board. So the key differentiation between a structure like ours, like the European Blockchain Association, and a traditional decentralized autonomous organization is basically that, first of all, the EBA was founded on a legal entity, which is the EV eingetragene Verein, which is basically the association registered in Germany, which gives us not only kind of the grounding rule of doing business, but also gives us a legal status. That is, of course, quite important in order to be registered in a traditional way. And the DSAO is then supported by a set of governance processes. And this is headed by the EBA board, which I'm part of. And this facilitates the integration of the EBA into society at large by addressing social, legal, economic, and environment aspects, and acting therefore as kind of a contact person. And what we really tried is to force with the structure of a decentralized, semi-autonomous organization that is combining the advantages of a decentralized network with the essential requirement of our society. So there, of course, you have a very strict rule set that is basically sitting on a smart contract located as what we call within a membership agreement, the EBA governance. So even the EBA governance is kind of a rule set actively voted and actively generated by the EBA members and the board in order to have a structured, very common based approach on how these association or these DAO SA should work. And this gives, of course, the possibility to be, on the one hand, super flexible, because as you might see also in your business, things are changing rapidly, regulatory issues, approaches issues, interest issues, like, you know, the NFTs, and you're seeing a lot of things going on, and we are quite flexible in kind of doing kind of a report on that and reacting on it very easily. And on the other thing, by introducing also kind of a gamification methodology with our own coin, with the XSC coin, which we might later go into detail, gives us the possibility to kind of influence directions and kind of trigger specific movements within the association. Due to Corona times, we are not using it at the moment as we should, but we have that kind of as an arsenal in our background to use it, and which gives us quite a potential on operations.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. So I'll just follow up with what you mentioned on the XSC coin. Can you maybe share some insights on what exactly is the vision for this in the future, and what is it being used for currently?
Yeah, you know, in let's say when we started with the XSC coin, it was first kind of an example on how coin creation in that terms on the Ethereum blockchain could happen, because you know, not everybody is very knowledgeable in all these blockchain issues, and one huge part of the European Blockchain Association is education on an executive level. So therefore, the first kind of function of the XSC coin was and is a very easy understanding and explanation on creation, smart contracting, dependencies, and basically interactions when it comes to creating and using coins. And that was kind of the first approach. And then we thought one step further, and as in the European Commissions, things are organized with tenders. So basically, there is a tender where you want to achieve something, and then you kind of apply for the tender. And once you get the tender, you get a certain amount of euros or money. So we kind of copied that tender system and started tendering specific needs within our decentralized organization, programming needs, education needs, curriculum needs, whatever you can imagine, describing the tender and offering the tender out there in the market to our members and third party if needed. And then offering as a tender gratification the XSC coins. The XSC coins are traded on several quite small exchanges because we didn't really want to push it too hard into having a tradable and therefore, of course, speculative coin. But people can really try it and exchange the coin. We have our own wallet and people kind of exchange that. And we even drove it in pre-Corona times at one of our meetups to the point where people could buy goods like a beer or a pizza or whatever. So it is really kind of a combination between a real good tool where we gamificate or where we intrinsically trigger a lot of things on the monetary base in our system, but also use it as a good example, showcasing kind of the broad band of functionalities of a coin. In the future, of course, we are looking into kind of leveraging that existing coin supply and get it listed at some exchange, and also showcase, of course, the next step of having a more speculative approach.
Okay, yeah. So it's basically like a very diversely integrated tool within the decentralized organization. Yeah, that's very interesting. And I also like that you're not just focusing on the speculative asset part, not just on the price increase, which is crucial, but the actual value and the utility this coin has within the European Blockchain Association. So as I also know from my own experience, as I was part of the founding team of the OITOC working group, the tokenization working group, where we focus on, fostering the emerging token economy and education thereof. Can you maybe give a brief overview as to which working groups does the European Blockchain Association currently have, and kind of what is the direction you aim to go with this?
Absolutely, because there are examples out there on other associations who have a lot of working groups. We looked into that concept, and what we decided for us is that when we are building up a working group, that we need kind of a working group leading functionality like you guys, that is really into the topic and that really can drive a working group, not only building it up, but before basically initiating a working group with us, there has to be defined a clear purpose and scope of the working group, clear objectives, strategies, policies, plan, like a business plan, basically. You should be aware in the working group about your business and finance, about your economics, about law implementation, and of course, the computer science approach. And therefore, the working groups kind of follow a given structure. On the one hand, making it possible to kind of control the goal and the reach of the goal, but also on the other hand, make it as flexible as possible when it comes to people who want to be part of the existing working groups. So at the moment, we have the working group that is doing stuff regarding staking infrastructure. It's called OIPOS. And there the first goal was, interesting enough, that staking is within the industry or within our ecosystem quite well known. However, not many people out there know about it, especially when it comes to a very technical approach. So the staking facilitators had a common goal in order to bring out a piece of paper, a positioning paper, saying this is what it's all about. This is what part of technical infrastructure it involves. And this is where we see us embedded into a regulatory approach, because especially those working group has this fear on being regulated or overruled and over-regulated at a certain point, because it's a lot of money involved already and it's raising. So therefore, our purpose was kind of to give that umbrella functionality and then distribute that positioning paper, which is ready for download, to the stakeholders in the European Commission and of course to the other regulatory bodies, and use that then as a first step approach in order to then strengthen that staking working group. Right now in the staking working group, I'm not quite sure about the actual number, but it's a couple of 100 million of euros staking power aggregated in that working group. And it showed us in a very beautiful way that even in a highly competitive environment, with the neutral framework of a European Blockchain Association, these competitors can work together in order to build something they all benefit from. And this is basically the ground that every working group is mastered with. Then the other one is a self-sovereign identity working group. One of those topics that is basically, nearly 10 years old within the European Commission. It is kind of a given and a very interesting problem setting. And therefore, a lot of different stakeholders already have interesting solutions, but there are still very deep issues to be attached with it, especially when it comes to privacy, identity, when it comes to preserving identities and so on. So there it is, not the approach for a positioning paper, for example, in the first place. There it is the approach of education and exchange of knowledge. So one of the things we did there, for example, was this week on this week with week, we hosted an event bringing together the Israeli from Israel, the guys from Self-Sovereign Identity, together with 2 universities. So there was a very interesting bunch of around about 60 people from Israel, together with our Self-Sovereign Identity work group leader. And those exchanges are at that point of time enforced in the work group. So it is one step more in the beginning than the staking facility work group or the staking infrastructure work group. It is now in the case of awareness building and exchanging, because before you really start into action, you want to have the best of breed network. And the tokenization working group, which of course best, is even one step earlier. It is kind of the building phase. It's more or less now an open call, structured open call, saying, this is what we want to reach. We have our objectives. We know where we want to go. We know which problems we want to solve in the first, second step. And therefore, we now identify out there people and of course companies who should be on this working group. And it can be as big as a huge telecom organization or even a government body or whoever. It really doesn't matter as long as the goals then has an impact in solution building that want to be reached by the working group. And the dynamics of a working group are quite hefty and sometimes very fast and very fast paced, because imagine the EBA is giving kind of the tool set. Imagine you're a worker and you have the great tool set and you can work with a great tool set. And this is what the EBA is all about. We give you this tool set and we give you, of course, if you need help, a little bit of help, but then you can do whatever you want as long as you're in the governance model and you are in the guided model. And then you really can use the tools as long as you want. And that is a great impact, because if you really want to achieve something on a neutral ground, which is very necessary, especially in that highly evolved and super rapid movements like blockchain, you can use it and reach that goal faster than ever before.
Yeah, and from my own experience, I can say it's a great experience to be part of a working group. So really props to you guys for, setting this up and providing this diverse set of tools, as you mentioned, to really foster a neutral ground for all different players coming together and, bringing, innovation forward in the respective topics. So really a great approach from you guys. At this stage, I would like to ask, and you've kind of already dove into this a bit, the weekly Bean Crypto special question from their community, which this week is basically, how do you guys interact with regulators in general? And I know you mentioned already the European Commission, but maybe you can share some more detail on that regard.
Yeah, the regulatory approach is also highly complicated, diverse, and complex, as you might know, because we know basically, especially in the financial part and in the financial industries, who is regulating what and who has what role in a regulatory approach. As blockchain as a whole, of course, is so complex. It is not only financials. Everybody is talking about crypto, but we both know it's not only crypto, it's a lot more. So when it comes to regulatory approaches, especially in a working group, we first have to identify the different parts which are really knowledgeable at the moment and play a role. And then in second step, which are not so knowledgeable. So basically what we do is we always try to get involved and get on board the knowledgeable part of the regulatory institutions and bodies, and then try to train and trigger the not so knowledgeable. Because out of our experience is the not so knowledgeable ones could be the worst impact on the long run, especially for a blockchain ecosystem. So imagine we are building something great, we are building a solution, and we are building a regulatory approach as kind of a prospectus or a solution that could be a blueprint for a regulation. And then the not so knowledgeable say, we don't know about it, sorry, we do it our own way. And this is always not the ideal way, or it's not really a structured approach. And therefore, our approach when it comes to regulations is let's give an example on financial, for example, right? We have in Germany the BaFin. We have on a European level several other regulatory bodies within the financial regulation, and we have basically in every country a different approach. So in financials, for example, in Greece, we work with our partner, and one of our partners there is a National Bank of Greece. So it's a national bank, which is very important because they basically drive through their existing work over years and decades regulation and kind of write the rules together with the regulatory body. And therefore, for us, of course, it is important not to overrule those existing power struggles, but to kind of bring us in as kind of a co-pilot, I would say, a knowledgeable co-pilot who has, on the one hand, the deep connection into the existing network of specialists, like companies like yours, but on the other hand, also has an overview on the regulatory structure. And therefore, this helps us then as a neutral organization to bring those parties together and kind of organize that approach. It's like, if you go to a concert and you have all these different instruments and you need somebody who is really conducting it. And so we feel most of the times a little bit as a conductor and not as kind of the super detailed doer then. And I think it's a good role to conduct and then have a governance conducting set how everybody needs to play in order to achieve valuable output.
Yeah, so basically you play a crucial role that regulators also do not harm the future innovation, right? So that's definitely, a substantial part that you guys are inheriting as a substantial role within this ecosystem. So at this stage, I would like to ask you maybe, since obviously, as you mentioned also at the beginning, the topic is tokenizing everything. What is to you maybe apart also from, obviously the governance aspects, what is maybe your favorite tokenization use case, so to say?
My favorite tokenization use case is still, because the whole world is basically built on trade, right? So I'm really, when it comes to whatever you're wearing, what are you drinking, if you're eating nuts or whatever, it's all kind of traded. It's all come here. So my tokenization aspect there is always how to have, first of all, trading in terms of logistics, of course, but even more in terms of authenticity. So is it authentic? Is this chemical that I'm buying authentic? And that could be tokenized. Is this nuts harvested there authentic when it arrives here? And this is, I think, the fascinating part when it comes to tokenism I'm thinking of is that it doesn't matter if it's physical, non-physical, if it's digital or non-digital, if it's liquid, if it's a rock, if it's a diamond, if it's a watch. Basically everything in kind of a traded, interconnected global society is tokenizable, and when that is understood, and trade is, I would say, the largest part of all that we do as humans at the moment. If those trade aspects are understood and the impact of tokenization for the trader, the user, and of course the producer, then it could be even more impact than we see at the moment.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. And so basically you are aligned with the vision of, so to say, tokenizing everything. So I like that. You also mentioned this before briefly. Obviously, the current NFT hype is making quite some noise, right? And some describe it as kind of the first, the tip of the iceberg when people join this space, right? Because people that haven't heard about blockchain or maybe even haven't heard about Bitcoin, they potentially may know about NFTs. So maybe what is your take on that current hype? And do you think NFTs are a great tool for potentially also to revolutionize and disrupt the entire, let's say, intellectual property sector, for example?
First, when I heard about NFTs and really analyzed it, I was, to be honestly, quite skeptic about it because, we have seen so many hypes, we have seen so many things. But one of those crucial moments where I really understood why even huge companies kind of put their money onto NFTs was in the art industry side. You know, as a non-fungible token, of course, you can use a lot of things which is non-fungible. But in the art world, you have an existing infrastructure where you have the artist and where you have the agent or a gallery and where you have the buyer. So there is a middleman. And the middleman normally kind of controls and conglomerates a lot of things. So if you are the greatest artist of this world, you cannot really go behind or beside that middleman. It is strictly impossible. So let's imagine now, and this is what we are seeing right now, NFT platforms, even, you know, like Nifty and all the others, with substantial funding, giving them the opportunity, giving artists the opportunity to leverage their existing networks, mostly driven by, of course, internet networks, social media, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. So leveraging that power of viralism in order to gain what they think is worth what they do. And for me, it started when Christie's, basically the #1 auction house, which is over 200 years old, started thinking about it, and started thinking about is a difference between really doing it. And they, as you know, they did it. They sold the NFT for a couple of millions. And here comes the interesting part. Selling it is the one hand, but you know, they're getting a percentage, like 18% or even more, depends on what they sell, but let's say 18%. What is if they say we even get our percentage on crypto? And this is what they did. So they basically changed the whole backend infrastructure for being ready for this NFT game. And just a couple of weeks later, Sotheby's also joined the game. And this really showed me that, especially in the art industry, we are talking about a new huge movement when it comes to monetize digital art. Of course, NFTs, as always, especially we've seen it on the ICOs, and there are also crazy things happen. You know, you've seen on the big stars in the US and also in Asia, issuing NFTs and leveraging their impact. All right, you know, they can make a couple of millions for basically nothing. But also things like watch producers. You know, there are a couple of watch producers who are now using NFTs, and they are selling those NFT arts in a higher value than the actual watch, which is of course crazy. But if you look into the secondary market that is going all onto NFTs, so it's all about speculation there. Maybe it's a bubble, but you know, a lot of people even thought Ethereum is a bubble, which is now raising like crazy, even there is kind of no really shortage on demand. And if you might remember, the DAO, when they were founded, this was the biggest crowdfunding at that time. And they raised, I think, 15 or 16 million Ether. And the Ether there was 20 euros, nothing. So imagine the DAO would be now here with this amount of Ether. It would be a huge corporation. So what I want to say with that is, I think at the right time, with the right tools and the right mindset, NFTs now could be a huge impact.
Yeah, I fully agree. There's definitely, you know, very interesting use cases. Also, you know, you mentioned the art side, generally intellectual property, but also I think potentially it could be leveraged as well for identity, right? Because an NFT is unique, and then you have that unique structure, which also humans are unique, so it kind of matches, right? And you also mentioned the DAO. So maybe at this stage, a brief question. Something that I often, you know, kind of compares, you know, the value of, for instance, let's say equity tokens, you know, the compliant digitized shares, and on the other hand, DAO tokens. Do you see that the value of a DAO token, since it inherits certain roles within this ecosystem, such as also governance, could be in the future, also from a neutral perspective, obviously not just from the enthusiasts that currently obviously believe in these DAOs, but just from a neutral perspective, be as valuable as, for instance, shares of a normal entity?
Absolutely, absolutely, because everything at the moment, we are seeing kind of virtualization of industries. We are seeing it in the traditional industry for the last, let's say, 10 years, especially with the processes getting virtual and getting, things like artificial intelligence and machine learning kind of stuffed their way through in order to get away from the material side into virtualization of processes on the industrial side and on the other industry side impacts. And therefore, these virtualization processes kind of really push anything that is DAO related or that is digital related or not really equity related in terms of you have a house, you have a car, you have a watch, or you have something that is worth something in a traditional way. As long as people see, and I think this is the most critical part, as long as people see that there is a secondary market giving them the foundations and the fundamental right to sell and trade and buy, then everything is possible. I remember the times from crowdfunding, and in Germany, the regulation of crowdfunding is a little bit stiff. But in the beginning, the UK was in a way more open regulatory approach. So the UK was always a leader in crowdfunding, especially when it comes, for example, for real estate. Why? Because the UK had this law, this regulatory law, where you could kind of buy into via crowdfunding real estate, a house, let's say, or a flat, and then you could sell this share instantly on a secondary market and trade with it. This was not possible in Germany at that time. And this secondary market was the thing that really popped the whole thing. And I think that is what we are seeing right now there.
Definitely. I think I fully agree that DAOs will become increasingly relevant, as well as when people understand it a bit more, when there's more education to be done, right? And it's also much easier to get your hands on some DAO tokens than maybe a fully compliant, regulated, let's say bank that's issuing or offering the shares to the respective customers, especially also for potentially the unbanked population, right? It can be quite a substantial move forward in terms of having like a sustainable and passive income generating portfolio potentially, within their wallet on their phone. So to wrap this podcast, and it's been really amazing, and thanks for the great insight so far. One last question I have for you is the question that I always ask my guests is, where do you see blockchain and tokenization in 10 years from now?
To be honest, I would wish for a tokenization or blockchain world where you don't really see what is happening. It is kind of commodity. It's like, I compare it to wireless LAN. About 10 years ago, wireless LAN was one of those secret, very, very limited possibilities to go via air into the internet, especially, let's say, in a lobby of a hotel. And you had to pay a lot of money and you had to be intellectually program yourself in. Right now, wireless LAN is commodity. And I see in minimum 10 years, a kind of a tokenized blockchain ecosystem out there in the world, basically, with very few interactions from the human side, smart contract regulated, through protocols we don't even know right now, which are developing in a very fast pace. That is kind of giving us as human beings the possibility to use it without even knowing that we are using them.
I again fully agree with what you mentioned. I think the key will be also an intuitive user interface, right? As you mentioned, like similar to the internet, where people may not need to understand how it works, but they definitely see the obvious efficiencies. So thanks, Michael, for your no pun intended, amazing insights, and happy to be part of the European Blockchain Association, and looking forward, to future conversations. And to our listeners, as always, it's been a pleasure. And if you have any questions about the working groups, I'm sure you can reach out to Michael or myself about this topic. And looking forward to the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and stay healthy, and see you very soon in real life.
Looking forward to it. Bye-bye.